The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy at Children's Health Defense. Today, we are dealing with what might be an existential crisis in the EMR advocacy field. There is an attempt to destroy local community control over every single aspect of those little and big cell towers that you see on your streets, that you see in community centers on top of schools. Well, there are some ways to fight those things, and Children's Health Defense has been at the forefront of that, and so have my guests. Today we have Odette Wilkens with the National Call for Safe Technology. She is the President and General Counsel, as well as Sidnee Cox, who is with the EMF Safety Network. This existential threat involves a two-prong attack happening in Washington, D.C., in both the executive branch and the legislative branch. And people tell me this is the worst threat they have seen in the EMR field ever. So this is very, very important. If you don't know about this, you got to stick with us. You got to learn about. Oh, and after this segment, we will be joined by Miriam Eckenfeld to give even more information and up-to-date breaking news on what is happening, because things are changing every single day at a very quick speed. But first, as always, let's go through some news. We're going to do this pretty quick. A lot of you know that the ACIP committee met just last week and changed the recommendation for the Hep B vaccination at birth. John Gilmore at Autism Action Network, he tweeted here, country's recommendation on the Hep B shots at birth. Those who say no, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Chechnya, Denmark, Estonia, France. So you see the list. It's a big list. Those who say yes, the United States. It's the only country basically in the developed world that has that recommendation. Had that recommendation, the recommendation has changed, and the AAP is going bananas, and, well, there's tons of stuff going on in the news on that. Here is an important one, too. In the Defender, Ray Flores, CHD to appeal after court rules against woman who sued National Park Service over no cash policy. Ray Flores is the lead attorney on this, and this is a national park in America that won't take American currency. American currency that says it's a legal tender for all debts, public and private, but the park systems are stopping taking cash. This is another aspect of the control grid, whether it's the towers, whether it's EMR, whether it's digital ID, whether it's stopping cash. We're going in this direction. I'm very happy that Ray Flores and CHD are appealing that case. We'll continue to watch it. It's a very important one. Defender had a great story about the local control on EMR. Unprecedented power grab. FCC, Congress race to strip local control over cell towers. Excellent article in the Defender from Suzanne Burdick. It's what our show is going to be almost entirely about today. And CHD has released a couple of action alerts over this. An action alert: stop the federal cell tower takeover. Light it up for local control. This one is to stop HR 2289. That's a bill we're going to be talking a lot about. The legislature in D.C. is trying to push this bill forward, especially the Republicans seem to be behind this now, which means it's a danger because we have Republican control in the House, in the Senate, and in the executive branch. But also the FCC is trying to do this through regulations. We have another action alert that is in the show notes as well, too. Stop unchecked cell tower expansion. Tell the FCC to stop cell towers in your neighborhood. Okay, so this is the two-prong attack that we're dealing with. And to talk us through this so we can kind of understand what's going on, what happened, and what are these two separate yet the same dangers, I'd like to bring on Odette Wilkens and Sidnee Cox. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. So it's a little overwhelming. There's two action alerts we're putting out, two separate things happening, but they have the same end goal. Odette, why don't you just give our audience, my audience, a little bit of background on what we're dealing with here?
Okay, we're dealing with, first of all, probably the worst piece of legislation we've ever seen, and that is H.R. 2289. It is a consolidation of 21 bills that came out of the Communications and Technology Committee in Congress in order to basically streamline the deployment of cell towers, which basically means virtually eliminating local zoning ordinances, automatically approving antennas on almost any structure. It allows even 200-foot cell towers in your neighbor's yard. The FCC can cancel local zoning ordinances. It eliminates almost all environmental and historic preservation reviews. Now, there is already the National Environmental Policy Act and the National Historic Preservation Act. And those cell towers are subject to those based on the 2019 DC Circuit of DC Court of Appeals order. But this law will override that decision. It'll override the National Environmental Policy Act. It'll override the National Historic Preservation Act. So if you have an historic district, they will be able to put these cell towers wherever they want.
So that is the bill that is in the legislature currently right now. And that's what it's activating people that you need to call Congress. You need to complete this action alert and let them know that you're watching, that you vote over these issues, and you say no to this. But in addition to this, there is also the FCC regulations that are trying to be changed. Now, the FCC is controlled by the executive branch, not the legislative branch. So that's under President Trump's control and those who he has appointed. Sidnee, could you talk to us a little bit about that and about what the FCC is trying to do as well?
Well, the FCC right now is sort of like the companion jurisdiction to what the government is now doing, what the legislature is now doing. So basically, this FCC rulemaking, when I first heard about it, I was so alarmed because we go to so many city council meetings and planning commission meetings and advocate for local control. And when I read this, I first heard about it not too long ago, I think in September, and it was shocking. And I thought, what have we done all this work for? Why have we worked so hard to go to all these meetings and make all these calls and all this advocacy when they're going to just take it away? You know, just the FCC can do this rulemaking. So that was what was so shocking. But then when we found out about the federal bills and realized, oh, it's a two-prong attack. I have to say, it's sort of like, you know, like D-Day. You know, they're coming at us from the sky and the land and the sea, and it's discouraging, but at the same time, there's something that we can all do. And I think it's raising awareness for everyone how fragile it is, our control, and how important it is for us to speak up, to send something to the FCC docket, make a comment, to contact our local legislators, hand them flyers, make a lot of noise. We have to all make a lot of noise, both for the federal bills and also against the FCC.
I want to talk a little bit about prior notification. Now, it's already bad with EMR towers. They can already get them up pretty easily. I know people who have woken up and seen them outside of their windows, and there was nothing they can do. They try, even with the mechanisms that we have and our organizations push, it was too late. But there are currently requirements for prior notification, at least to some extent. And when you get, if you're lucky enough as a citizen to receive that prior notification and to know what happened, there are steps that you can take to prevent or slow down or require environmental studies and various things that you all know much more about than I do. What would this law, what would these regulations do to the prior authorization, the prior information they got to get out there that we currently have?
Well, First of all, I just want to say that when you find a cell tower outside your window without notification and without proper permitting, then that was done illegally. We have found that a number of these towers are being put up in the dead of night without the required notification. And in addition, they are subject to environmental and historic preservation reviews before they are installed. So the current laws are not being enforced, and the ordinances are being violated. What has been happening is that people have been finding construction workers and industry putting up these towers without the appropriate ordinances and without the appropriate approvals and permitting process. We already have a system in place. The problem is that the telecom industry is telling local governments that their hands are tied. That is not correct, because under the Telecommunications Act of 1996, there is a thing called cooperative federalism, and Congress meant to preserve the balance between state and federal governments. And by doing that, they wanted the states to still have control. This will not interfere with local government except for specific instances, and that was one of them that you indicated, that they cannot deny a tower for environmental or health effects. And the federal circuits have interpreted environmental to mean health effects. So we have preemption for both environmental and health effects. So the industry is coming into local government saying your hands are tied. They're not tied. Even though the local attorneys that represent the municipalities and the townships are very experienced in their specific areas, many of them do not know the telecommunications law, and therefore they just accept what the industry is telling them. So right now, if a tower is put up in front of your yard and there was no notice and there was no proper permitting process, then you definitely have a claim against the
I just want to talk on that in terms of proper notice and doing everything in advance. Most people don't know to be looking out for this. Most people don't know what proper notice is. And oftentimes I have had this with a friend that a tower went up and they were like, wow, what is this? And when they went into looking to it, there was notice given. They just had no clue. They weren't. It's not like this notice is like sent directly to the email addresses of every single one of us in the that will be within that tower, right? They have ways of doing it where they follow the law, but they're still sneaky. And right now, Odette, correct me if I'm wrong, we're trying to preserve that. We're trying to preserve even the limited amount of prior notification they give to us. And so, and just to get back to my question, these regulations and this law would make it totally legal to put it up outside your house with nothing at all.
Correct. That's exactly right. And the problem is that people are not going to wake up until the tower is put in front of their place. And if these bills pass, there will be no recourse. None. And they will say, well, what happened? I had no notice. I didn't know about this. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise awareness. It's very difficult because the telecom industry has millions and millions of dollars that they're pouring into advertising. They're contributing to the campaigns of the various federal legislators. And so we really have an uphill battle trying to raise awareness. However, the people who are aware of this are very energized. I want to say we also put out an action alert. I know that CHD has also put out an action alert. In our action alert, there were at least 15,000 letters that were sent. That's to people's three federal legislators, their representative and their U.S. senator. So that's like 5,000 people that have already put out notices to their legislators, and that's very impressive.
Yes.
If we can have even double or triple or quadruple that number, we can definitely make an impact. Now, when we were calling the various offices of various key Republican members who we think would be sympathetic, they were indicating that they were getting lots and lots of calls. So they were taking notice, and what we need to do is we need to keep up that that pressure to notify our representatives that we don't want these bills to pass. And if people would like to set up meetings with their representatives and with their U.S. senators, we are ready to help you at the National Call for Safe Technology, to accompany you and to present on these federal bills. So you can contact us at the nationalcall.org, and you can actually contact us at hello@thenationalcall.org, and we will accompany you to your federal representatives so that we can actually talk in detail about these laws and about these bills and how we would like them to oppose them and why.
That's excellent. You talked about momentum. At the CHD National Conference, we had an EMR panel. It was on the last day. It was about 2-3 o'clock on the last day, but the room was filled. I personally walked around to all the tables. There was at least 2, 3, sometimes 4 people at every table taking notes. We're definitely seeing much more interest in this. We're definitely seeing people catch up with, man, I really need to get on this, because what I was talking about that happened to a friend of mine was one of the small towers that was on a residential street. But there's these ginormous 200-foot towers that we're seeing that are going up, usually away from residential spaces, at least to some extent. Lou, I think we have some photos and pictures of this, of these insane things. If this law passes, and if the FCC changes their regulations, this could be what you wake up to. You could wake up and look outside and see that, and there's nothing. You have no recourse that you could take it all. Sidnee, why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and about your experience with this in general?
Well, I did want to say that it's really important for people to go to their planning commission meetings or their city council meetings. And there's something called public comment on non-agenda items. Usually it's the beginning of the meeting. And you can just bring this information to them, because our local government is really representing us. And really on the local level is what we can make a lot of impact. We can. So you just go and tell them about this FCC rulemaking, tell them about the bills. But the main thing is with the FCC is that local government can write a letter. They can actually discuss this. And if they have good zoning laws, a lot of local governments have good zoning laws that can allow some sort of restrictions on this infrastructure. And this will bypass all those local zoning laws. So that's why it's really important that people go, make a comment, and encourage their local government to then contact the FCC or write a letter on behalf of the local government to say what this will do and how this will impact them. So I think that's really important for people to just show up. You can send an email. You can write an email and send it to your local government. But emails, people get, hundreds of emails, especially our local government gets hundreds of emails. And the other thing is that there's language about effective prohibition of service or interfering in the deployment of wireless service. And they're going to say anything is going to interfere with this deployment. Aesthetics and alternative site review and all the things that we have in our zoning laws to protect people, certainly aesthetics. If you have a beautiful piece of property, you're looking out at the mountain and then there's a cell tower. So people need to preserve the small amount of opposition that we have. And that's by showing up at a meeting and just making public comment and bringing flyers and handing them out. The other thing is a lot of our local officials are not paid a lot. They're like the planning commission, for instance. You talk in front of a planning commission. They are appointed. They're not part of, they don't get a salary. In our local zoning board, they get paid $100 per time when they show up. Now, there's a lot of stuff that they have to do to be able to know whether this is appropriate for that location or not. It's not one size fits all. It never is, depending upon the topography and the terrain and how close the closest buildings are. They have to make these decisions. They don't have much time. Meanwhile, the applicant, the telecom applicant, has been meeting with the paid planning commission. They have a kind of cozy relationship. You could just tell when you go to the meeting and they're saying, hi, how are you? Meanwhile, we're showing up angry. How dare you put this tower there? But meanwhile, they're already friends. So we have to create a relationship ahead of time, or at least we're a friendly face. And the one thing I really don't ever do is scold the planning commission. How dare you do this? I mean, when you're angry, you've already established a bad relationship. So you show up, you're polite, you're respectful, you acknowledge the difficulty in making these decisions, you tell a personal story, and you make a relationship. You only have 2 minutes. Usually it's just 2 minutes. So I really advocate for people to get involved on the local level and do these things. It takes time. You got to get there. You got to, drive. You got to sit through other things on the agenda, but it's really worth it.
Well, if this bill and these regulations pass, you're not even going to have the ability to do this locally and to fight back. You had brought up about sending emails and making public comments on the local level. The comments we're asking people to make right now in the action alert are actually on the federal level. Why don't we show that here? There's a link in the show notes that'll get you to submit a comment talking about these new regulations that are being proposed in the FCC. You put your name, put your address and such. Odette, what should your average person who's watching this now, who's pretty amped up now, pretty upset by what they hear, and they're clicking on this, they're going to go make a comment. One of the things that happens, I see this, they're like, I'm not an expert. I don't know what to do. They might want to go copy and paste something from your website and put it in. What advice would you give to somebody that wants their voice heard, but feels like they're just a citizen, they have nothing to say?
Well, because they're a citizen, they have a lot of power. And that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to let everybody know that you have a lot of power and a lot of authority just by making your voice heard. And there's already a lot of opposition to, let's say, 2289 in terms of the preemption. So, for instance, there's the National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the National Association of Telecommunications Officers and Advisors that have already come out against the preemption portions of 2289. So if the politicians start hearing from their citizenry in great numbers, they are definitely going to take notice. And with respect to making a submission to the FCC, that's extremely important, because what the FCC is saying in their proposed notice of rulemaking is that there's been a lot of opposition from communities and they want to stop the opposition. They say it outright, pretty much. And we need to let them know that, no, we have a right to have our voices heard, and we don't want to be stopped from having our voices heard. If the FCC rule goes through and 2289 is adopted, we will have practically no recourse, and there will be no recourse in the courts to go and get recourse. And that is the most dangerous thing that can possibly happen. So we have to make sure that we preserve our rights. Even with the U.S. Constitution, we have to preserve our rights in each generation. Each generation requires us to be vigilant and to actively protect our rights. Otherwise, they just become words on a piece of paper. Yes. Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and our other rights under the Bill of Rights would have been obliterated if we did not keep fighting for them every single generation. And every single generation has to recreate it. Otherwise, they just become words on a page. So that is what we need to do. We need to, as you said, Michael, we need to preserve the rights that we already have. What little rights we have, we still have rights to go into court and to say no. And one of the things that the FCC rule will take away, and the HR 2289 will take away, is the right to deny a cell tower because there's no gap in service. Under the Telecommunications Act, if there is a gap in service and you cannot make a phone call, then they can come in and put in the communications infrastructure. If you can make a phone call and there's no gap in service, they have no preemption. And the reason why they want to put in 2289 is because 5G is not protected under the Telecommunications Act, and that was specifically indicated under actually not 5G, but 4G was indicated in a decision by the judge, a senior district court judge, in the case of the village of Externet versus the village of Flower Hill, in which they were being sued for having denied 4G cell towers. And so the carrier said, look, the FCC rule says we can put them in, we don't need a gap in service. And the judge said, no, you need to have a gap in service. The Second Circuit has indicated that that is the standard. It is the Second Circuit's responsibility to interpret the Telecommunications Act, not the FCC, and therefore, no. You do not have the right of preemption. The FCC specifically wants to take that away in its rulemaking, and these bills will take that away. And they will, and they are saying that wired and wireless are equivalent services. They are not equivalent. Wireless is great for mobility, when you're on the street and you need that connection. If you're at home, you don't need wireless. You can use wired connection, which is much superior, higher capacity, very secure. 5G is not secure. It's not a secure service because it's a software-based system, not a hardware-based system, so it's difficult to quarantine a security breach. You gain access to one node of the 5G network, you gain access to the entire network, and it's because it's a software-based system. So, and so it will take away the right to bring suit because there's no gap in service.
So basically, they want the rules and the laws in place to implement their control grid unabashed with no barrier, because the little bit of wins we're having are bothering them and bugging them enough to take away even that. I want to talk about one last thing. We're almost out of time for this segment, but last week there was a vote. There was a committee vote on this bill, HR 2289. Do I have the number right? 2289? Yes. Okay, I got it memorized now. So there was a committee vote on HR 2289. It went along party lines of Republicans all supporting it and Democrats all against it. However, you just told me, Odette, there were some other bills as well, too, that we're seeing bipartisan support of. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the politics going down on the Hill in D.C., too?
Okay, so the problem is the Democrats don't realize about the hazards of wireless radiation and how it produces adverse biological effects. So that is going to be our task, to really let the Democrats know that there are hazards. Those have been established by science. It has been established by the government. The industry has done studies that have established that, and they're not being publicized. So that is going to be our major task with the Democrats.
Sidnee, why don't you talk to us a little bit about this? How do you see the politics in D.C., and what do you think our audience needs to know about this?
Well, I think what they need to know, what we all need to keep in mind, is these are people. We think of the system as something too huge to even be able to influence, but they are people. When you pick up the phone and talk to a legislative aide and you talk to them about this issue, you make a connection, and it's every single connection that we make that is so important. And the one thing I keep wondering about is that there's a fear, there's an emotion there. Oh my goodness, if we don't bridge the digital divide, people will be left behind. What a terrible thing to have people left behind, and you get the emotion. So therefore, the government acts like a big parent. Oh my goodness, we have to sacrifice for the greater good so these poor people can't have, not have connectivity. But my question then to that is, greater good for whom, really? What is the greater good? If you're going to bring up the greater good thought, then let's really talk about what the greater good is and who is profiting from the supposed greater good.
I agree completely. A lot of this digital divide rhetoric is designed to increase towers in Black and brown neighborhoods, right? And where are they placing them? Are they doing safety studies about where the children are, where the people are? No, they're thinking about connectivity. They're thinking about how to get them signal. And that is something we do need to think about. How do we educate the lawmakers on that? How do we educate them that the telecommunication industry doesn't care about the safety. They just care about the connectivity. And I agree with you, Sidnee. It's not to get people connected. It's really to make money and to do other things.
That's exactly right. The digital divide is a rhetoric because, and it's an empty rhetoric, because when we ask them, especially in New York City and in other parts of the country, why are you placing them here? The answer in New York City is that it's proprietary information. And so we don't know whether it's actually bridging the digital divide.
So wait. So they say to you, you don't have a need to know. We're not going to tell you why?
Correct.
So,
Why are
so
you
they're
placing
claiming a public need, but they don't need to tell you what the public need is.
But the thing is that they're not filling a public need. They're filling their own need for additional revenues. And so what's happening is that the whole rhetoric about the digital divide is really just a way for them to be able to strong arm their way into communities and to put up these towers, whether there's a gap or not. You don't know if there's going to be a gap, because they're not required to show a gap in service before they put them in, and that's what happened in Flower Hill. The carrier wanted to come in and put in those towers even though there was no gap in service, and the town proved that there was no gap in service, but they still wanted to put them in. So they're not filling. It has nothing to do with digital divide. And the fact that they're taking away our landlines, and they want us all to be dependent on cellular service, is really going to be creating a digital chasm. It's going to be creating a communications chasm, because when there's an emergency and the cellular network goes down, and the cellular network goes down, it's not if it's going to go down, it's when and how many times in a week is it going to go down. And so when that goes down, and you lose your electricity, so you can't even use your phone that runs through the cable or through fiber. You're not going to have a backup system, and you're not going to be able to make a phone call unless you keep your landline. But the FCC also wants to get rid of the landlines now. So that becomes a problem, and if you're talking about a gap in service, that's going to produce a huge gap in service in an emergency, because then nobody's going to be able to make a call, and they're not going to be able to find out what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to run.
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing as cash. When we saw, countries that have gotten rid of cash when they had natural disasters, no one was able to transact with digital ID and credit cards and stuff. It's that exact same thing, and it just reveals there's another agenda here. This isn't about serving the public. Ladies, I'm so sorry we're out of time in this segment, but Odette Wilkens with the nationalcall.org and Sidnee Cox, EMFsafetynetwork.org. Thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to have you back. We have our work cut out for us in this area.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you so much. Do not forget, reach out to Congress, fill out the action alert, make the phone calls. You want to tell them to stop HR 2289. I think I got it memorized now. Stop HR 2289. The link is in the show notes here. And after you do that, you want to go to the FCC and you want to fill out a comment about their new regulations that would do nearly the same thing as this terrible bill would do, stopping all local control. Please make sure to do both of these. And if you want some extra credit, pick up the phone, call your congressman, call your representative. There you go. That number will connect you to your rep. You call that, you're just going to have to punch in your zip code, and they get you right to your representative. Please do this. It is so incredibly important. If we don't do this, if we don't win this one, people don't know what we do for activism in the EMR space going forward. It's existential for us to be able to continue fighting for our rights to not be poisoned by radiation, by EMR and EMF radiation. And with that, now I'm going to be handing it off to the head of our EMR department here at Children's Health Defense, turning it over to Miriam Eckenfeld.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another EMR and Wireless segment. My name is Miriam Eckenfels. I am the director of CHD's EMR and Wireless program, and I'm so grateful for the show that Mike just did and for the shout out to all of the important work that we're doing and the action that's required. I'm excited for today's show because we're going to have a conversation about digital IDs for children and also about how we can protect the National Radio Quiet Zone. But before we dive into that, I just want to do a very quick follow-up on the action alerts, echoing what Michael and Odette just discussed, to please add your voice. We actually have 3 alerts and sort of like one campaign that we're running. The first one, we divided sort of like into the action against Congress and then the action against the FCC, and both are really important. The first alert, where you can let the FCC commissioners and Congress know that you do not agree with their new proposed rules, has already over 60,000 emails sent. So it's very important that you add your voice to that alert and let them know your disagreement. It's also really important that you add your voice to the official dockets, that you submit comments to the FCC dockets. We have until the end of the year to flood the docket with comments. There is a separate alert for that has instructions, step-by-step instructions on how you can do that. And then, of course, the action alert to stop HA2289, we've already covered that sufficiently. There are over 30,000 emails that have been sent to elected representatives. Let's get this number up if we can. Please take the alert. And then very important, over Christmas, Stephanie Orcriccio, who is working with us on the grassroots advocacy to stop these bills and to stop the FCC rules, has put together this amazing campaign, Light It Up for Local Control. We are asking activists, we are asking people who are familiar with the subject, who are concerned about these cell towers, to get out there and share with other people over the holidays their concerns. Sorry, I'm having like a little Zoom issue here, but I'm back. So this campaign has readily available flyers, posters, postcards, t-shirts ready for you to download. It's also a great landing page where you have all of the action alerts ready to go in one spot. So we're asking you to go to your Christmas events, go to your local tree lighting, go to your Christmas market and show people the flyer, ask them to take the action alert, spread the word, take pictures, let them know what's going on the federal level, and ask them to be part of it, explain to them why it matters to them, and light it up for local control. Now, with that being said, we're going to turn to today's guests and to an in-depth conversation about digital IDs and the National Radio Quiet Zone, for which I will welcome Andrew McAfee in a minute. But first, I want to welcome Greg Glazier and Michelle and Doug Bottoms. I'm going to do a very quick intro and then we can get started. So Greg Glazier is an attorney and he is the CHD legal counsel for our digital ID and privacy work. He is a constitutional and data privacy attorney that defends families against biometric surveillance, digital ID mandates, and coercive data collection system. He most recently helped the Bottoms family secure a major victory, a digital ID exemption that allows their son, Caden, to continue playing NFL flag football without being forced into a biometric tracking system. Hugely important. Michelle Bottoms is the mother mother of Caden, who stood her ground against the NFL flag football's mandatory digital ID system. Collaborating with CHD and, of course, Greg Glazier, they successfully invoked COPA protections to stop the forced biometric enrollment for their son, Caden. And her husband, Doug, who's also with us today, is a retired military officer. He has been speaking out alongside his wife about the dangers of digital ID and the growing need for public resistance. I'm very excited for today's conversation. Welcome to all of you.
Well, thank you so much.
Greg, let's start with you. Tell us what happened and how did you help the Bottoms family?
Sure. Well, this is a great family. They're excellent. Their son is an amazing flag football player. And you may not know this, but flag football is really important in America. When I was in college at UCLA, I played flag football. And since then, the sport has just taken America by storm. And so there are millions who play this. And even the NFL is involved. So this boy, Caden, who I represent, is in a flag football tournament, multiple tournaments that go across the country. And in order to play, the leagues, like NFL flag, for example, they will require that you get a digital ID to verify your age. And so the Bottoms family, who is amazing, they said, no, we don't want a digital ID. So they told the league this. First, they did everything right. They told the coach, they told the league, and the league said, sorry, tough luck. We require it. So then, fortunately, the Bottoms family did their research and they found Children's Health Defense. And as our viewers know, one thing that we do at Children's Health Defense is we win. And that's what we did here. I drafted a very comprehensive legal letter to the companies that were requiring digital ID and told them exactly how they were violating the law. And they then changed their tune quite quickly.
Right. And it's so important and fascinating. You've been working on this digital ID stuff for a while and have been warning us and our followers that it's coming. And this is sort of like such a concrete example of how this really impacts families on the day-to-day. So Michelle or Doug, like why did you decide to oppose this? What made you decide to speak up against digital ID for your son?
Well, I think it all started for us a couple of months ago. Our son's been playing flag football for several years now, but recently moved to a new team that solely enters tournaments for tournament play. And so we quickly found out that in order for him to participate, he was going to be required to get this digital ID. And we've been absolutely opposed for this for quite a while. And so we tried with the coach and at our level, we also tried to reach out to the tournament, and the tournament just kept telling us no. So we then said, well, we can stop here and just sit with that, or we can fight this, because we really felt like this was wrong. We felt like our son's rights were being violated under the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and we wanted to do something about that, but not just for our son, but for every child, every family that is affected by this, and there's thousands across the country. So that's when we got in touch with Greg, and he was able to help us get that accommodation. And it's been really neat. Our son's been along on this ride with us throughout this, and we've been able to show him that these requirements, they truly are, we feel that they're truly manufactured. And he's been able to see that because we've been able to go to these tournaments and provide these documents that we would have otherwise been required to upload. We've been able to provide them in person, and it's been a seamless process for us, for the leagues. And he's been able to see that come to fruition. So I'm really glad that we were able to work with Greg and get this accommodation and also get this story out to your audience.
Right. Greg, tell us a little bit, what is the federal privacy law, COPA, and how can it be enforced when companies or association sort of like overreach?
Yeah, that's really the key question for next steps too. As Michelle just highlighted, these companies, they they do need further enforcement. So what we've done is filed an FTC complaint, the Federal Trade Commission. So COPPA requires operators of children's websites and mobile applications and so forth to post a privacy policy. And this is the key point, they have to obtain consent before they collect personal information from children. And there's also companion laws in each state. For example, the bottoms are in Virginia. I'm in California. California also has a companion law. So children have excellent rights in America, meaning you don't have to get a digital ID. But in order to enforce your rights, you either have to persuade someone who's trying to take your digital information not to do it, or alternatively, you have to complain to the federal government, which is what we did here. We sent a complaint to the federal government and said, we need relief. We need to order these companies, these flag football companies, even though we're pleased to report this win, that we got them to accommodate us. They only did that because we sent a legal letter, and most families don't have that ability to do that, get a lawyer, send a letter and all this. We need a better solution. So that's where the FTC comes in. President Trump's FTC comes in so that they can ensure that these companies allow opt-ins. So currently, if you go to the flag football website and you want to play flag football, let's say your son wants to play flag football, and you see it says digital ID required. Well, it shouldn't say that. What it should say is, here are your options. If you want a digital ID, that is an option to you, but here are other options. That's how the law is supposed to work. And so we cited that law in our letter. We also cited an excellent statement obtained by Children's Health Defense, specifically you, Miriam, obtained this statement, which is, according to the NIST's digital ID program leader, Ryan Galuzzo, quote, this is from the top agency over digital ID. This is a quote from the federal government. We are in complete agreement that all digital ID schemes must be voluntary for members of the public. That is a CHD win. That is a win that leads to other wins. And in particular, I think it would be great to hear Doug Bottoms explain the impact, the importance of the bigger picture here, how it affects things like national security. Like, what is the implication if someone can gain access to a child's biometric information, their social media profiles, and so forth? Miriam, you've spoken a lot about that through CHD, doing excellent work. Doug Bottoms has excellent information on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for passing the ball over, Doug. I think that's an amazing question. Like, why do you think the NFL flag football is requiring digital IDs? Like, what's their, why would that be something that is desirable? And then B, also, where could this take us, right? What's happening with the information? What are the implications?
Well, from the why, from a commercial aspect, it's a money-making venture, right? So it's from marketing, which they admit to in their privacy policies in terms of use and as on their websites. There's money behind this. The dangers are that when parents, let's be honest, we're all busy, and when they say there's in order for your child to play this, you got to get this. A lot of parents go through the process. We're very, very busy. They don't understand. A lot of parents, the expectations are when they provide that information, it's only being used to verify their child's age for the tournaments. That's not the case when you break down their privacy policy. They're aggregating data on those digital IDs. So once that profile or once that digital ID is built, they're going to start aggregating data and profiling your child, ostensibly for marketing purposes, but we don't know, right? We don't know what the future holds. Right. So that's not something that really want to condition our children to accept. And then take it a step further. While the children don't understand this, right? They just want to play football. What are the odds that 11, 12-year-old understands growing up that everything that they do online is being aggregated to a digital ID that's profiling them? How is that going to impact them being accepted to a university or a job, or what's the future implications of there? And then going right back to the beginning, like Michelle said, this is all just a completely manufactured requirement. Within the websites themselves, it says that these data brokers that are aggregating all this data are paying the tournaments to make this a requirement. That's that's something that we really hope the FTC will take into account, take seriously. Again, this is not needed. This is not what we want to condition our children to accept, or this is not a future that we want to push them into.
Right. And I think that's so important what you just said about, like, children don't understand the ramification and the implication that this could have down the line. Of, like, they're already putting so much information about themselves and about, like, their private lives onto the web, sharing so much data that, having all of this consolidated in a digital ID is really, really dangerous. So, Doug and Michelle, what do you want other parents to know? How do you motivate others to get educated and to stand up for against digital ID?
Well, like in this case, just be awareness. All the parents certainly care for their children, signing them up for football. That's a good thing, right? But to not comply with these kind of artificial requirements, and then maybe help compel the FTC to box these companies in. This is something that there needs to be walls put around this, and a digital ID is not needed ever to participate in society. And that's something that's a mentality. It doesn't matter what your politics are, doesn't matter what your mindset is. That's something that can bring us together, because the fact of the matter is we're all different in our own ways, but we don't want a digital ID that can be used by somebody to separate us, right? And so there's larger societal implications, but it starts with first saying no, and as we've shown that we can say no and still participate. It's not a problem,
right?
But also teach children that there's long-term implications here, and it's going to be a continuous learning process because we don't know what the future holds in terms of technology, and just be aware.
Awesome. Thank you very much for those words and for standing up. And Greg, thank you so much for all you do. I know you gave the flowers to me and CHD, but you are really the driving force behind a lot of the legal privacy work that CHD is doing. So thank you. And thank you for joining us today. I now would like to talk to Andrew McAfee, who is an electrician, a licensed electrician. He's an inventor and he's an educator living in the National Radio Quiet Zone in West Virginia. Andrew is a leading voice for protecting the Green Bank region, one of the lowest RF environments in the country, from new wireless intrusions, including smart meters and tower expansions. Andrew works very closely with us through the Stop 5G initiative and CHD more broadly to strengthen West Virginia's radio quiet zone and to secure protections that safeguard both the scientific research that's happening in the National Radio Quiet Zone, as well as the quiet zone as a refuge and as a recovery zone for people who are negatively affected by RF radiation. Welcome, Andrew. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the Radio Quiet Zone? What is it and why is it so important, not just for science, but also for human health and people who have electromagnetic radiation syndrome?
Thank you, Miriam. It's great to be here. Yeah, it really brings together all of these topics that we've already talked about today: cell phones, digital ID, other tracking systems that are on their way. People object conscientiously that I don't want to have my privacy stolen. And, well, we have a place right now in Green Bank, West Virginia, that is being preserved both by the West Virginia state law as well as the Green Bank Observatory to keep a no radio zone. There's no cell phone towers, there's no 5G. And this is where people have gone to be protected that are electrically sensitive. And they have new lives there. Now, that's the most extreme expression on, you can protest consciously, but when you are physically attacked and you have now a new lifestyle that you've been ripped out of the matrix because you can no longer function around Wi-Fi, cell phones, and the electric fields in your home, you have to take drastic action. So we're talking before your life is destroyed by the effects of your cell phone's Wi-Fi. There's a lot we can do to go to the radio quiet zone, to vacation, take your family there, enjoy what we used to feel like before this new lifestyle that we've incorporated, because everything is now so desperate and in crisis. So we have to have a cell phone and every second, and we have to answer the text every second. So we children now have no idea what it's like to live without these devices. So it's our job as parents to take them to a radio quiet zone, go camping, remember what it feels like, allow children to grow up with a relationship with nature, with a relationship with your parents, with your family, to actually develop the high sense perceptions that we all have as human beings rather than have them destroyed.
Right. And you made a couple of like really important points that I want to reiterate. So first of all, when we think about the National Radio Quiet Zone, for us, we talk about it almost like a control group, right? We do not have almost anywhere in the world areas that are completely RF radiation free. And because of the observatory and the research that the federal government has been doing in the Green Bank Observatory, they needed this area to be RF free in order not to interfere with the equipment. And so we have this national treasure where we really can see, how do humans behave when they're RF free? How does nature behave? How do animals behave? How do plants and trees, the flora, the fauna behave, right? And so this is hugely important for us to maintain. And then the second thing that Andrew said, about like people being electromagnetically sensitive, or have EMRS syndrome, as it is now called, we always highlight that certain studies suggest that up to 30% of the general population, that's over 100 million people, are somewhat affected by the effects of RF radiation. 5% are severely affected, and 1% of the general population is so severely affected that they cannot perform basic functions of life when they're exposed to RF radiation. And that is a growing problem as we are rolling out this infrastructure, which it is, again, so important that we measure the infrastructure rollout. Instead of putting cell towers everywhere and radiating our children and our environment 24/7, we ought to take a step back and really look at what's happening. So, Andrew, you mentioned that the National Radio Quiet Zone is protected by both federal and state law. What threats do you see coming, and why is it so important now that we organize and protect the Radio National Quiet Zone?
You've already mentioned the national actions being taken right now to strip us of our rights. The new technologies coming out with AI are impossible to fathom at this point. We need that control group, like you had said. We need a place where, if everything goes south, we need to have a place where we can, there's no cell phone towers around that can be tracking us. A lot of medical devices are going to be reliant upon Wi-Fi and other things. Like, I have actually know a person intimately that has a tracking device for his heart because he, was, whatever you want to call it, has a heart condition now, and now he has to be around Wi-Fi to make sure that, oh my gosh, what if something goes wrong with my heart? So I have to be, tracked 24/7. So the fear is driving all of these new technologies to where we can have medically implanted devices. The digital ID is a huge issue. And so whether it's Catherine Austin-Fitts or James Corbett making the argument of what's going to be happening in our future, this is all very analytical discussion about what's possible coming. But the real threats right now, like you had mentioned, we are being attacked, and there are massive infections, MRSA, E. coli, being caused by wireless radiation. And there's great research that shows, especially Dr. Sharon Goldberg, that has shown that Wi-Fi frequencies specifically induce or increase infections, and they actually cause antibiotic resistance. And a lot of hospitals are really having an incredible problem. They are blanketed in Wi-Fi, and you wonder, well, why are we having a MRSA problem and other types of bacterial issues in our hospitals? Well, there could be a really good problem. A solution is get rid of your Wi-Fi.
Right. It's very true that like the radiation, RF radiation from cell towers, cell phones, wireless is associated with a wide range of health impacts, and there is an increasing number of studies that are proving more and more correlation between things that we previously thought have other sources and how it exacerbates certain symptoms. And it is really a quite dire situation when you dive in. And so having this region that is untouched by that is really hugely important. And it's also a great educational opportunity because the stories of the people who live in the National Radio Quiet Zone, but also the movement behind protecting the quiet zone will serve as a very important educational opportunity. And you are, at the helm of this, Andrew. So tell our viewers how they can help. How can they get involved? And what do you want them to know? What's going to happen next, et cetera, et cetera?
We have a website dedicated to this Protect National Quiet Zone, and we are fundraising right now to launch a legislative action to support the existing local West Virginia legislature, which is an extremely strict, since the 50s, 37A has drafted extremely low parameters for maintaining basically a radio quiet zone. Now, this is not for humans. This is for research for the Green Bank Observatory. So recently, unfortunately, the Green Bank Observatory announced that they are now not objecting to local Wi-Fi signals in the school and other businesses. So they have a guy that runs around in a truck that monitors all these frequencies, but they're not going to object anymore or tell people that, you got to get rid of this, or else, we're going to tell the prosecuting attorney to come with their police to actually fine you. So now this is very concerning. Now that we have Wi-Fi being allowed to exist, then the infrastructure will actually follow, and this nature abhors a vacuum. So we have a real concern. So you and I, we're the choir. We know that this is extremely important to preserve, but also electrically sensitive people need a place, a sanctuary to be able to live. So going to the protectnationalquietzone.org website, make a donation to help us do the legislation necessary to protect human beings, to protect a sanctuary for all people that want to either have privacy, don't want to be tracked with, whatever devices or AI technology is going to be coming out, or actually a place where we know that, gosh, we have to keep a place where we can go. We know that when it gets really bad in the cities and, cell phone towers are coming up and, we're exhausted, we're burned out, we have chronic fatigue from everything, we just have to get away. Is there a place? Well, now's the time to protect it. And if we don't protect it, there's no infrastructure right now. There's no cell phone towers. There's no big investments right now. If we can keep it that way, we can actually preserve a place where we can actually go. And yes, in the long term, we need to keep this going for our lives in general, but let's just keep a 10-mile circle. This is only 10 miles around the Green Bank Observatory. The larger this is a very small area that we're talking about that is going to be preserved. It's a good start, but let's just keep what we have at least.
Absolutely, Andrew. And thank you so much for leading the charge on this. And thank you for working with us on it. If what you have heard today is of interest to you, go to protectnationalquietzone.org and join the fight. Thank you very much, Andrew, for being here. I appreciate you coming on and sharing. And to our viewers, I just want to close by saying that if any of the things we have discussed today is of interest to you and you want to join the fight against cell towers nationally or in your area, go to stop5g.org and follow us on social media at Stop5G Near Me on all major platforms. Go to 704nomore.org, join the national effort to protect our environment in our children from unwanted cell tower to maintain local control. Subscribe to the email list at 704 No More so that we can keep you up to date with all of the initiative, the action items, and everything you need to know. So thank you very much for joining today. And now stay tuned for the People's Study Story of the Day.
We are live, so tell us your name.
My name is Charvel Condon.
And you have 2 children?
Yes, I have 2 children. I have my son Isaac, he's 7.5, and Waverly, she's almost 4.
Okay. So you've written down a lot of what you want to say, so I'm going to let you just go ahead and say it if you've got it all together.
Sure. Yeah, I wrote this originally when we were fighting against the measles bills, but I wrote about my son. I asked all the questions, and I was asking the wrong doctors. Wonderful doctors, but trained in one way. At mainstream medical and the one size fits all with vaccinations. They told me that weak immune systems, which my son was a preemie and his immune system is compromised, right, needed to be protected by giving vaccinations. And so he was 6 pounds in NICU, 37 weeks gestation. And
just a picture of him.
Yeah.
Can I show the people?
Yes.
So there you see. There he is.
Yeah, and that's exactly at 2 months old. So they decided to give him the 2-month-old shots. And he received 7 different vaccinations in 3 different shots: diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, Hib, Hep B, pneumonia, and polio. And he was given more toxins than a grown man should receive. He was very lethargic, and they said it was fine. A few weeks later, he had pneumonia, and they said it was from aspirating, which I believed it was avoidable because that was the side effect of 2 of the vaccines. We did go home from the NICU, but I didn't really know enough. After his 2nd round of vaccines, he had a fever, so I gave him Tylenol. And I know that depletes glutathione now, but he was restless and would not sleep. And he was a tube-fed baby. He would sleep the whole night. So this was very counter character. He was having a vaccine reaction and maybe even the DTaP scream or encephalitis. And then after his 3rd round of vaccinations, he ended up with seizures, infantile spasms. I began looking why he had seizures and learned that it was due to the ingredients inside the vaccines and that he does not detoxify well. The adjuvants in vaccines are not safe. He should have never been vaccinated in NICU, especially at 37 weeks gestation. His immune system was already compromised from early birth. And he also has Down syndrome. No vaccine has ever been studied on children in the Down syndrome population for safety or side effects. And he possibly doesn't even keep immunity from vaccinations received. We have chosen no longer to vaccinate, and my 4-year-old daughter was born at home, a home birth VBAC, and she's received no mainstream anything, no vaccines, no mainstream medicine, and she is ahead. She was talking at 18 months in sentences, now becoming the older sibling for...
Can I show them?
Yes.
Right,
this is Waverly.
Healthy, beautiful child. So how is your son today?
This is my son today. He's developmentally about 1 or 2. He's diagnosed with speech apraxia, so he may know what he wants to say but cannot say it. He still has...
It looks like he's had a little stroke.
Yeah, he has a crooked smile at times, but not all the time. It's hard to say whether that is from side effects of seizures. I know there's a percentage of kids who have infantile spasms end up with autism. He doesn't have a diagnosis of autism, but it's definitely the care that we give, the therapy, ABA, is as if he does. Because he has Down syndrome, he has stimming. He'll spin in circles for like minutes on end. He has a chewing behavior, chews on chewies. He is smarter than you realize. He smirks at me when I tell him to stop. So he kind of knows what he's doing, but he still has a feeding tube. He eats only pureed foods. He's texture averse. Will just spit it out. He won't chew on food. All liquids go through his G tube. So he's considered nonverbal. We send him to school. He's in special needs class. He's in 1st grade right now. But it's a lot of therapies, a lot of phone calls, a lot of trying to find ways to support him, trying to find caregiver in our house. We got him on a supplement regimen that's pretty detailed, but it's supposed to help his overexpressed genes with Down syndrome called targeted nutrition intervention. And it's to help keep him away from getting things like Alzheimer's or cancer. But I mean, I don't know through the rounds of vaccines that he got, like if there are things that will be still in his body. We did his labs, and his mercury levels and aluminum levels were very high. And we were able to use supplements to detox his body, and they came down. And thankfully that they stayed low. Aluminum went up again. I think it's because it's in our environment. But overall, he's going at his own pace, and I see what he is doing. Like he'll sound out some words. He'll talk to me in his own language. I can hear some of his words. Like he'll say "oods" for food, or outside, or house for house. I use words and sign language with him, and just trying to help him learn to communicate. He has an AAC device, which is like an iPad, but he just kind of looks at it. When I try to use it, he starts actually using sign language. And so he's a joy to be around, but he also has all the ranges of emotions. So just we figure out how to help him regulate, how to help him just access environment, but also push him out of his comfort zone as we need. And my daughter, she is 4, but she's becoming the older sister, the older sibling, and helping him along, cheering for him. It's like, oh, good job, Isaac, you took a bite. And so it's just a very interesting dynamic to see both of them interact together, and just to create, I guess, a positive development for her and for him.
Yeah, so what would your advice be to the young mum watching right now who doesn't really know what to do?
Well, definitely don't vaccinate. There are a lot of things in the NICU I would have done differently, not just vaccines. They pushed HMF or formula. They had this idea of what he should be doing, but they just don't fully look at the individual. So you really have to do your own research and use all the resources and find the truth, because they hide it. They guilt tripped me in the NICU to vaccinate him, and I didn't even want to give him the full array, but they're like, if you don't do it, he's not going to be protected. And I didn't know enough, and I only read the handout they give at the hospital. I didn't know there was such a thing as a vaccine insert, and really how toxic it really was for his body. And as I've researched, I see that he is vaccine injured, and on myself, I'm vaccine injured as well. And I hope that whoever's trying to figure out what to do, if they have fears, look at your specific fears and then look at the history of that specific illness. So find that balance and find how it's treatable. Everything's treatable.
Will you or your family ever take another vaccination again?
No, we will never take another vaccine ever again. And I try to help others choose not to as well, and help them learn as I've learned over the last 5-6 years.
Oh, thank you for telling us a story. I'm so sorry about your son, and so pleased for your daughter.
Yeah, thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.